Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 149 of BrewTalk with Mr.Beer. My name is Robert Lewis. I will be your host for today's show. We appreciate you guys taking the time to tune in and watch our videos. We've had a hiatus for a few weeks of not churning out any videos at all. We've had some technology issues that have hopefully now been worked out, and we will start cranking out some vids again. So, without further ado, we will dive into today's topic, which is what is the difference between LMEs and DMEs? If you're looking to create your own recipe, looking to build your own thing, or if you're just new into home brewing and you're kind of curious, well, what are these two thingamajiggers and what exactly do they do? We're going to break down, kind of what the difference is between them and how to best use them and some helpful tips and stuff like that. These are two main adjuncts in your beer. So if you're brewing with Mr.Beer and you're like, oh, I want to check out some recipes, a lot of them are going to contain a pack of LME or product some DME. First things first, the main difference is one is dry and one is liquid. LME stands for liquid malt extract. DME stands for dry malt extract. So basically the same thing in different formats. What's unique about both these and what's different from like our standard hopped malt extract is these malt extracts are not hopped. So it's just malt. There's no additional hops in them or anything like that. So all they're going to do is kind of add more flavor, more body to your beer, increase the ABV, darken it a touch, all that cool and fun jazz. So that's kind of the main difference. Liquid malt, dry malt. Now we're going to talk about how you use these bad boys. LME, liquid malt, is pretty simple. It's just like brewing with hopped malt extract. It's a little more versatile because it's on hops, so you can do like hop boils and stuff like that with it. So if you're creating your own recipe, you're like, oh, I want to boil some hops and some liquid malt, you can definitely do that. Like I said, if you're checking out our recipes and you're looking to take this step, we have our advanced series recipes, advanced brewing series, I forget the exact phrasing there. Basically, those are a can of liquid malt extract as a base. Then you're doing like an hour hop boil to get the bitterness out of there. Because since there is no bitterness in the malt, you need to get that from the hops. If you're going to do your own boil with LME, you've never done one before, a tip would be to make sure that you are fully mixing it up in the pot before you bring it to your boil. If you don't have it mixed and there's some sitting on the bottom, it will scorch and will create some off flavors. It will not be good. So make sure it is fully mixed. When using DME, there are a few things you will need to know as well. So first things first, if you never use DME, it can be a little bit of a surprise of how difficult sometimes it can be to work with. So if you just first dump your DME into like your pot of water, so most instructions DME call for, getting, a gallon of water, whatever it may be, dumping your DME there. If you just dump it in there, it's going to get all goopy and lumpy and all lump up together. It's perfectly normal. That's what happens, but you want to, so when you're brewing with DME, you want to add it slowly. So the best way to do this is to kind of sprinkle it in slowly, and you want to keep mixing your pot in there. That will help it dissolve. That'll help prevent it from clumping together, all that stuff. If it happens to clump together, it'll be fine. Mix it the best you can. The yeast are still going to eat up that bad boy. They don't leave any sugar to chance. So what you want to do is add, some DME as your water's coming to a boil. So you turn your pot on, start slowly mixing in your DME. If you want more specific tips, we did a video about how to brew with DME a while back. You can find that on our YouTube page. You want to mix a little bit at a time. Don't dump the whole bag, as that will create issues. If you're using DME for like a hot boil, you want to make sure you're waiting to the hot break before you add your hops. So once you mix in your DME, you're going to keep mixing it because you'll notice that your foam will start to rise. So you keep mixing it, it'll keep the foam in check. You get to the hot break point once the foam has subsided, there's no more foam rising, you have a nice low rolling boil. That's when you can kick in, throw your hops in there, and get a hot boil going. An easy pro tip to keep the DME in check: if you have a spray bottle with water in it, as the foam is rising, spray it down with some water. That will drop that foam down a little bit. That way you can try not to make a mess waiting for that hot break, because trust me, it is quite a mess. When talking about color of your beer, so DME will usually help you preserve a lighter color in your beer. So if you're not wanting to darken your beer too much, go with DME. It has very little impact on the color of your beer. Adding more liquid malt of any kind of hopped malt extract or just regular liquid malt extract will darken your beer. So if you're really trying to brew like a nice Pilsner, Pale Ale, a light IPA, and you want to add something extra to the mix, I would choose a DME over an LME. It's just a little difficult to work with. LME is much easier to brew with, like we mentioned earlier. And as far as flavor goes, there has been some people said online, read forums, blogs, that LME creates a more pleasant flavor in your beer versus DME. I don't think you'll notice any difference. I think that's a little far-fetched out there, but I thought I'd mention it since I found it in the research. And one thing about DME is more concentrated, so it can kick up your ABV with using less volume. So you can use like a pound of DME and really crank that bad boy up if you want to get crazy. But again, the whole process of mixing that can be quite a pain. So in the end, it just comes down to kind of what your personal preference is and what you feel like diving into when brewing. So like I said, the main difference is one's liquid, one's dry. Liquid malt extract, dry malt extract. Neither of them are hopped. So if you're creating your own recipe and you're not using a can of HME, you want to make sure you get some hops and do some hop boils to get bitterness out of that beer. Depending on how, what kind of beer you're brewing will depend on what kind of hops you're going to use. Also depending on how long you're going to boil your beer as well. LME is easier to use. DME doesn't really impact the color as much. So there's, pros and cons to each one. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's video. Hopefully you guys learned a little something about LME, DME. If you have any further questions about either of these or how to use them, reach out to our customer service team. You can just go to mrbeer.com and you can chat with them there, or just shoot an email over to customerservice@mrbeer.com and we will answer your question. Make sure you're following us on all social media platforms. We are at Mr. Beer on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you want to join fellow Mr. Beer brewers, you can find us, or you can find that with our Facebook group, which is Mr. Beer's Brewing Society. Just search that on Facebook and answer the 3 questions and we will let you guys in. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's video. Now we'll talk to you guys next week. Cheers.